I want to create that bridge between the entrepreneur's passion for the business, but also his passion for his life. And I want to help them truly break through so that their business goals align with their personal goals, and you create that connection of development there.
This is the Building a Lifestyle Business Podcast, where we inspire solopreneurs like you to win back your life by teaching you how to build businesses that maximize your freedom, flexibility, and income, all without trading time for money. Here's your host, Nick Murphy.
Hey there, my friend, and welcome to the Building a Lifestyle Business Podcast. Like the man said, my name is Nick Murphy, and I'm honored to be your host. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me for a little bit here today. If you're a frequent listener, you know I love you. Thanks for checking out yet another episode of the show. If you're a new listener, I'm really excited that you found us, and I'm happy that you're here. I'm going to do everything I can in the next 30 to 40 minutes to make sure that I pack so much value and give you tactical advice, help you kind of peel back the layers, if you will, through this interview that we're about to have and kind of learn all the lessons you can from my guests. That's my goal and my promise to you. I want to make sure that at the end of this conversation, you have no other choice but to press subscribe on whichever app it is that you're using right now to listen to the show, because you don't want to miss any episodes like this. That's my promise. That's my goal. When you do come back, I want to make sure that you know how to get in the game by showing you how to create your very own lifestyle business. Or if you've already started and you've taken that leap and you're in the game today, I want to help you attract more customers, make more money, free up more time, and make sure that you can live your best life on your terms. That's what we're all about. Today's guest is Todd Palmer. And in our conversation, Todd and I discuss what made him walk away from a successful career as a corporate CEO, what his coaching business looks like today, and he shares some great advice for any new or aspiring lifestyle business owner. I'm not going to make you wait any longer, so just sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Todd Palmer. My guest today is Todd Palmer. Todd's a successful entrepreneur and business owner. He works with both individuals and companies to support corporate growth, foster business startups, and guide leaders in the areas of talent management, workforce planning, and organizational development. As the CEO of a 6-time Inc. 5000 company, Todd knows the struggles that businesses face around the areas of people, cash, strategy, and execution. And through his firm, Extraordinary Advisors, Todd is able to guide leaders into programs of sustained profitability. Todd, how are you? Thanks for being here.
Nick, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing excellent. Excited to talk to you. And before we kind of get going, if you just want to elaborate, take a second and dig into that bio a little bit. Tell us kind of what you were doing, and we'll talk the majority of our conversation about the things that led you to walk away from kind of the corporate world and go into entrepreneurship.
For me, being an entrepreneur, I think at one point was something I was very passionate about for sometimes maybe the wrong reasons. What I mean by that is a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with, and being an entrepreneur, we often go into that space to deal with feeling sometimes the emptiness inside of us, sometimes filling up the black hole, so to speak, or to deal with the negative voices in our head that tell us we're not good enough, to tell us that we could do more and we need to do better. I found that, no matter how many awards we won, no matter how many accolades we received, no matter how many zeros became behind the number of the revenue, it didn't satisfy me the way that the coaching and the teaching did. It didn't satisfy me in the way that parenting did. So for me, I had that myth of entrepreneurship that was going to, create a sense of wholeness within me. And I found that wasn't the case.
So you were a CEO. And so the idea, I want to dig into the coaching and mentoring, because it would seem as a CEO, at least from the outside looking in, that you would have had an opportunity to kind of scratch that itch and do a lot of that in leadership at a company. What is it that's different about doing it in an entrepreneurial environment? Or were you just tied up with other business revenue shareholder type activities as a CEO that didn't really allow you to kind of be that leader that you wanted to be in that environment?
Well, I think from the environment perspective, we pivoted quite a bit in the 25 plus years of diversified industrial staffing. Yet there was a very entrepreneurial mindset at one point, give or take around the recession of 2006, 2007, 2008, as we reinvented the business. And the team I had at that time was very focused on being coached and on being mentored. But as people go through their careers, they want different things from an employer. And sometimes I didn't always evolve like I should have. Other challenges come into play that, people who help you grow your business from, $0 to $1 million bring a certain value, but they're not always the people that help you grow from 1 million to 5 million. And sometimes the people that help you grow from 5 million to 10 million are completely different. So there was those adjustments and changes. And the reality is too, doing a job like being a recruiter can be very stressful. It can be very much a thankless job. You've got clients, you've got candidates. Often you're just the middle person between those two. And there's that sometimes a lack of gratitude and a lack of appreciation for the work that's provided. So being a recruiter can create a lot of turnover in the space. So there was a lot of different factors in regards to what we were going through, what we were experiencing, and also, my natural tendency to want to go after the bright and shiny stuff, as a lot of entrepreneurs will do, was also a factor in trying to figure out where we wanted to go. I tried to exit the business a couple of times prior, and I always got pulled back in. And I think a lot of that was from the perspective that, I did identify myself as the CEO. I did identify myself as the leader of the team. Yet my gut was telling me there was other things I wanted to do. So it was a really awkward push-pull for quite a few years.
Talk about that struggle a little bit. I think that's a very common thing. We do a lot of things not to appease other people. We don't necessarily self-identify as, well, I'm doing this for everybody else. But to walk away from that title, you kind of alluded to the fact that some of your identity, both internal and certainly external, was tied up in this title or in this role. And it was sort of giving you what you wanted sometimes, but not every day. Just dig a little deeper into kind of what was going on in your heart and your mind as you wrestled with that decision.
And it was definitely a wrestling match going between that heart and head perspective. My heart was telling me that I wanted to make a bigger difference in the world. I wanted to create a bigger legacy. I worked with a gentleman named Simon Sinek before his book, The Start With Why, came out. And it really figured out that my purpose in life is I want to improve lives, and I want to improve lives with everybody I interact with. And I found that the further I got away from working a desk in the business and doing other things in the business, I was struggling to do that. Yet I found when I got the opportunity to mentor somebody or a younger entrepreneur or a struggling business, I really was able to see that impact immediately. I had a team of leaders at the time who I was working with, and they were able to do a couple of things that, frankly, they did better than I. They were better at managing the people. They were better at some of the training aspects of the business, but I still felt that I needed to have my fingers in all those pieces. And then giving up that day to day was really a real struggle, because I think we're told as entrepreneurs that we have to be that rugged individualist and that we can do a lot of things, but we really often will suffer from imposter syndrome. And I would sit in my office thinking, if my staff only knew how much better they are at certain things than I am, they might consider me a fraud. When I would go out and talk, or I would work with clients, there was always that battle going on of what I should be doing versus what I wanted to be doing. And what I wanted to be doing was really, working with kids, working with startup entrepreneurs, working with other entrepreneurs to help them avoid some of the pitfalls that I had. And it really was about a 3-year process before I really decided that's what I wanted to do. So that's what I do now.
Let's just go there real quick and tell us a little bit more about your day-to-day business and how you spend your time these days.
Well, what I do mostly is I work with startups, second generation entrepreneurs as well, and also fast growth entrepreneurs who want to take their business to the new level. I really find that makes me potentially a little bit different than a quote unquote regular business coach is I understand, having run a company for 25 years, the struggles we go through. So I love walking the path with my entrepreneurs. I've helped one company. They were really trying to figure out how do we get more money out of this business or make a better living for ourselves as the owners. And they thought the only way they could do that would be to double their revenue. We took a look at some of the pieces in the business. And I also talked with the entrepreneur of what his motivation was. Ultimately, what came down is his motivation is he wanted to trade. He wanted some freedom and flexibility in his schedule, but he wanted to maintain his lifestyle. So what we did is we really focused on his margin with that goal in mind. We moved his margin from single digits to over 36% margin in less than 8 months, giving him time off for his grandkids, time off for his family, time off for him to focus on his relationship with his significant other. And that's incredibly rewarding work. I've got other companies that we work with to help owner get unstuck because he thinks he should make certain decisions based upon old, outdated beliefs. So we work on those beliefs to get people to go to that new point. So ultimately, as the quote unquote business coach, I certainly can work with people in regards to cash strategy, people, and execution. But really for me is I want to create that bridge between the entrepreneur's passion for the business, but also his passion for his life. And I want to help them truly break through so that their business goals align with their personal goals, and you create that connection of development there.
You're really speaking my language. The name of this show is Building a Lifestyle Business, and lifestyle is front and center in the title because I have 5 kids, and I know I want to talk to you about what being a dad taught you about running a company here in a second. But that intersection and being able to build a business around the life that you want and thinking about the lifestyle that you want to live and then building a business that fits within it is something that I'm really passionate about and something that we talk a lot about on this show. So I've got to ask you, it's right here in your bio. What about being a single dad? What did that teach you about how to run a company?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I remember getting custody of my son when he was 2 years old. And in the Metro Detroit area where I got custody back in the early 90s, I had like a 1% chance of actually getting custody. So I'm almost like, in my mind, I'm the entrepreneurial father. 9 out of 10 businesses fail, but I had a 1% chance of actually making this happen. And I was very fortunate through a lot of, luck and planning and other components in the decision-making process to get that opportunity to raise my son. It was very important to me, even as I reflect back on it, it was a lifestyle play. I would drop him off at daycare. He'd be the first kid there at 6 a.m. He'd also be the first kid picked up at 4 p.m. And then from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. was his time with me. We got 4 hours of one-on-one time. I wasn't dating. I wasn't having much of a social life. It was just him and I. He'd go to bed religiously at 8 o'clock. I unfortunately had to be that parent who could put very strict boundaries in, because then from 8 to midnight, I'd go back and work on my business. So I created a situation so I could go to his school functions. I could be part of his sports teams. I could be the classroom dad as compared to the classroom mom. And it paid big dividends. Now he's 27 years old now, and we're very close. We, a couple of years ago, went hiking in Peru for his college graduation. And he talked a lot about, he remembers those days. He remembers not having Christmases because of the entrepreneurial journey we were on. He remembers the stresses, but he also remembers all the opportunity he had to get to know me as, not only as his dad, but also as the entrepreneur in the household who was trying to figure out and struggle through some of the challenges. So now he's an accountant. He's able to take that experience, pass it on to his clientele. And it's just made a huge difference. But really, like you're talking about for the theme of your show here, it really did start out as a lifestyle play.
How do you build that schedule? Because by my math, that left you about 6 hours of sleep, not even really, given that you're dropping him off at 6 a.m. and going to bed at midnight. What are the types of things, if someone's just thinking about getting into this game, or they've just started and they're trying to create that structure and that routine, because no one's forcing you to do it now as an entrepreneur, but you've got to manage all these things. You've got to juggle all these things. All priorities are equally important. And there's a little bit of a push-pull also in that world. What would your advice be to someone who's looking to create that kind of schedule where they want to be there for their family, for their kids, for their spouse, partner, but they also have a business to grow?
I've given up on the myth of a work-life balance. It's work-life integration. And work-life integration I've found comes most successfully from over-communication. And also know thyself. So I only need about 5 hours of sleep. So I've always known that about myself. So that's a big thing. But for me, even now, I had a client for Extraordinary Advisors call me on Christmas Eve. He was in crisis. He had a client issue. I had explained to my family that, we're on vacation, but I have to do this call because the people who allow us this opportunity and who trust me to be there, and I need to keep my word to them, sometimes call it inconvenient time. So I'm going to be checking out of our family time here together for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, and I'll be back fully present. So really for me, it's that energy management in addition to the time management and setting those client, meaning my internal client, my family, their expectations as well. The flip side of that is, I've got a client who likes to have early morning calls. Early morning breakfasts in my house are a very big deal. So I don't start any calls until 8:30 Eastern time, so I can have that breakfast time with my family. So really, it's that over communication. It's communicating to the family what your drive is as the entrepreneur. And it's also communicating to your clients, how you look at the world. All my clients, is crazy. I did a survey recently of how my clients chose to work with me, and they were very honest. We knew we wanted to work with you before we ever met you. They either have heard me on podcasts like yours, or they've seen me speak, and they've identified that whatever I have is something they want to plug into so that they can grow their businesses. Because I do talk about that work-life integration, because I don't see the possibility of work-life balance.
Yeah, it's certainly never 50-50. It might balance out over time, but I totally get the integration piece. And that's the main reason that I encourage people to build a lifestyle business, not just go start a company, raise some venture money and try to create $100 million exit, but build a business that actually feels good to you, that you want to work in, that doesn't force you to make sacrifices. That's such a huge deal.
Agreed. It's crazy because so many people will talk about, I want to build a business, which is great. But sometimes people end up building a really great job for themselves too. A lot of solopreneurs and people who are part of the gig economy are able to do that. And I think there's nothing more rewarding than feeling like I went to work today and I'm energized. Or even I had this happen recently, did a whole client day, came back, significant other says to me, how was your day? I said, I'm exhausted in the very best of ways. It's like a great workout. I'm tired and I'm energized and I'm ready to, let's go out for the evening and have a great time, because the work I did was, I saw the immediate impact. It's those light bulb moments, those aha moments. And I know someone like yourself with 5 kids, you see those with on the faces of your kids probably all the time, but that's the juice that feeds me.
Absolutely. So as an entrepreneur, as a father, how do you, one of the things you alluded to is the ability and the importance to transition between work and life. Like integration really does mean, I have this happen all the time. I might come in from a conference call or a client meeting, and within seconds, it's full dad mode. I've got a 3-year-old and daddy, and like, do this, do that, do this. How do you, from a mindset standpoint, is there anything that you've practiced, or any skills or tips or tricks or books to read that helps someone really understand the mindset that you need to have to be able to be fully present in all that you do? And most importantly, seamlessly transition between those two things at a moment's notice.
So the biggest tip I would have for anybody who struggles with those things is to remember that as the leader, whether it's the leader of our client relationships, the leader of our families, or even leaders of ourselves, so much of it does tie into communication. And the biggest piece I've found that has been successful in communicating is listen to absorb. Don't listen to respond. And also work with people and create a set of intentions versus expectations. So when I listen to absorb, I'm fully present. I'm taking in what you're saying. I'm able to hear what you're saying, whether it's your significant other, whether it's your client, or whether it's a 3-year-old. They feel that. They sense that. Your eye contact, your energy is different. When I come into the house, my intention is to be fully present. I don't expect myself to be, but that's my intention. Sometimes life happens and it's not always going to be perfect. It's all about progress, not about perfection. So for me, if my family knows, and I try to really live up to that, and some days I'm better at it than others, but if I'm fully present and I'm fully listening, I'm not tied to my electronics, I'm not tied to my devices for that time, that check-in time especially, it goes a whole lot better versus the time, if someone were to, I'm working from home today, someone come knock on the door for the middle of our podcast, I'd have to put up a hand signal and I'll be with them as soon as we're done, because now I'm currently working. So it's communication, listening to absorb, not to respond, and also having that intention versus expectation mentality. That's what I found works best.
Great advice. I love it. I want to shift gears here real quick and talk about your business journey since you stepped away from the corporate world. As you've gone out and you've built your business as an entrepreneur, what's been the highest high thus far in your journey?
In order to tell you about my highest high, I think I should tell you about my lowest low. 2006 was the lowest low. The company was $600,000 in debt. We were 60 days away from running out of all cash. The bank was breathing down my throat. I had personally guaranteed that money. So in the back of my mind, not only was the business online, but so was my family. So was the home that I was raising my son in. It was a very, very tough situation. I had to address that 60 days rate running out of cash. I had to address the $600,000 in debt. And the first thing I did is I walked in and I fired my entire company and I started over.
Wow.
That was the lowest of the lows. And from that, we grew to make the Inc. 5000 a record 6 times. In that process, we honored all of our debts to all of our vendors. We honored all of our debts to our bank, and we paid everyone back in full. And I think that experience and that ability to be able to have the discipline to pay the money back that I had borrowed, to go to my son and say to him, this is how we conduct ourselves as adults. We got into this mess. We're going to get out of it somehow. Having that faith, but while confronting my brutal reality that I have these problems, but having that faith that we're going to somehow figure it out was, I think, a really great life lesson for me as an entrepreneur, and life lesson for me as a father, and the ability to tell my son, yeah, we've paid everybody back. And he said, gosh, you could have filed bankruptcy. Now, especially because he's an accountant, he knows this. Hey, you could have filed bankruptcy and discharged all that. I said, but we don't act that way. We honor our commitments. So for me, that ability to satisfy that debt as an entrepreneur, as a father, was even more exciting than making the Inc. 5000 so many times.
I love that. Just logistically, I want to dig into kind of how you did that. Was there a revenue spike? Did you just cut way back on what you were taking out of the business? Just for anybody who's in that situation where they want to go that route, they want to do the right thing. but they are in that kind of bind. Just how'd you do that? Did anything significantly change in the business, new products, or how'd you do it?
So how we did it was really simple. We tried a lot of different things. We got into that problem because we had 2 large clients go bankrupt on us and stick us with their debt. Over 300,000 of that 600,000 was uncollectible bad debt, money that we had got. We essentially factored those receivables. So the first thing we had to do is we had to subordinate that debt. I had to work with the bank to convince them that I was going to make this happen, stick it through, and pull out of the other side. And I had to go ask them for more money because I had to fund the new receivables. So there was a lot of bank negotiations in my case. The second thing was we changed how we sold. When we got into the problems, we were very much the Walmart of staffing, the Kelly services of staffing, all things to all people all the time. We started asking different questions of our customers, different questions of our prospects. Remember, it's 07, 08, 09. The country was either at the beginning or fully blown into a recession. People were not hiring. The question really became, if you could hire somebody, what kind of person would you hire regardless of whether you're openings? And the resulting information coming back from the clients were overwhelming. We need high-end skilled trades machinists. We need high-end quality people. We need high-end welders, these high-end positions. When I say a high-end welder, think about someone who can go down to the Gulf Coast in Texas, scuba dive and weld underwater. That's a high-end welder. Those guys make 6 figures. So we found that there was an increased demand in those categories and a diminished supply in those categories. What we then say to the client is, well, that's going to cost more than your average temporary employee. We're fine with that. If you find that somebody, call me back. We'll make a place for them on our team. The tipping point really became identifying that increased demand for a skilled trade employee, the supply reduction in those categories because they were all aging out, and realizing we could charge more for it. The last piece we did was we collapsed our days outstanding from 120 days to 12. We got a quick return on our cash that showed great faith to the bank. They really appreciated that. It was a great stand-up point for us. And it really, again, came down to the questions we asked. Client would call in, hey, I need one of your people. Great. They'll say, what are your terms? Well, before I tell you what my terms are, when do you pay your people? When do you cut payroll? Well, they're going to give us one of 2 answers. It's either weekly or biweekly. And we'd say, well, we need to be in that same check run, whether it's a weekly check run or a biweekly check run. And they say that we don't do that. Well, then you can't have our guy. Now, remember, we had the guy they needed in an increased demand, diminished supply market that gave us leverage. That leverage then allowed us to get paid quicker with higher margins, which allowed us to pay down the debt.
Smart. No, I love it. It's good. It's a good conversation. It's a good thought. So what can you, as an entrepreneur listening at home, do with your receivables, with cash flow? Cash flow is so important. I think a lot of folks focus on profits and growing a certain amount of revenue, but you can have all the revenue in the world. And staffing is one of those industries where in marketing agencies, you can have a huge amount of revenue at a very minimal margin and still be broke all the time.
And you can literally grow out of business if you grow too fast.
Absolutely. Great advice, Todd. We play a little game on the show here called Rapid Fire. Rapid Fire is brought to you by Podigy. If you're a podcaster or an aspiring podcaster and you don't want to learn how to audio edit, trust me, you don't want to try to do that. Do what I do and hire Podigy. They make me and my guests sound great every single week. When you check them out, let them know that I sent you. All right, Todd, you ready to play Rapid Fire?
All right, let's go.
All right. What do you think about when you're alone in your car?
I really think, am I living up to my core purpose? Am I improving lives? If I'm going through the drive-thru at Starbucks, what can I say to this person that's going to maybe put a smile on their face? How can I show them some gratitude and appreciation for sometimes what is considered a thankless job?
What's your advice for your previous boss?
It's been so long since I've had a previous boss. I think what immediately comes up with is you don't have to be the smartest man in the room. I worked for a guy before I started my business who I would take all these ideas to, and he just could not embrace the need for change. He could not embrace the new ideas. And if it wasn't his idea, it didn't matter. And I realized when I had my staff that sometimes the best ideas come from the collective, not from the solo. So I wish he would have listened to some of the ideas we had because they would have been moneymakers for him.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Well, I'm not sure I'm ever going to really grow up. I'd like to think that when I grow up, if I grow up, I will be someone who makes a difference, someone who's, someday maybe I'll have grandkids and sit with them and talk about, the realities of life as I've experienced them and be that role model, that mentor to my family.
What inspires you?
I think the thing that inspires me most is what we're doing right now. And that's having a great conversation and the ability to share ideas and to learn from others.
What is your biggest fear?
That I'm going to run out of time, that I'm not going to get everything done before I'm called away.
Who do you admire the most?
I think the person, especially from a business perspective, that I admire the most is my older brother. He ran a large company, retired at the age of 49 with, not the need to ever work again. And since then, he's now 62. He's reinvented himself. He's done tremendously well financially, but most importantly, he's recognized that to live his best life by design, he needs to have that work and life integration. Especially when you don't need the money, you're able to choose projects that excite you. He really loves the work he does. There's passion in his voice every time he talks about it. So he's always going to be my older brother, and I always kind of aspire to learn more from him every chance I get.
Which celebrity annoys you the most?
I don't pay a lot of attention to celebrity. What I will say is any celebrity that uses Twitter as their main communication platform, and they're not open to deep questions and probing questions. It's a narcissistic, self-serving ability versus someone who actually wants to really have like an in-depth conversation. I think they sell themselves short by not really leaning the uncomfortableness of having to face tough questions.
How do you define success?
So I stole this from Tony Robbins. It's not mine, but I really do define success as doing what I want, when I want to do it, as often as I want to go do it, with whomever I want to do it with, whether it's going on an amazing trip or whether it's just a quiet night at home, watching Netflix. If I'm with the people I want to be with, doing something that we all enjoy doing, that really does it for me.
All right, last one. You get to share a drink or a meal with anyone in history, dead or alive. Who is it and why?
I think if I could do that, I would choose Paul McCartney, because I think he's influenced so many different people in so many different ways. I would just love to sit there and pick his brain to see exactly how he thinks and how he creates and how he's a Beatle, but he still comes across incredibly approachable and generous with his time and his talents. So I really admire his self-knowledge and his self-awareness.
All right, Todd, you survived rapid fire. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is there anything you go back and do differently if you were starting a business today based on something that you know now that you wish you had known back then?
Oh gosh, I think absolutely I would focus on margin over revenue and recognize that ego gets wrapped up in chasing the $20 million number, the $30 million number from a revenue standpoint, and recognize that only 4%, 5% of companies ever even reach $1 million in revenue. And is it worth paying that price? Whereas if you've got a nice $800,000 company and you're bringing in $300,000 to $400,000 in margin, that's a heck of a lot more valuable than a $10 million company bringing in $100,000 in revenue or $100,000 in margin.
Great advice. What's your number one parting piece of advice for someone who's thinking about getting in the game and going out on their own to start their first business?
I think the biggest thing that startup entrepreneurs, regardless of age or education, need to recognize is that the only way we learn as human beings is through trial and error. And the only way we learn as human beings is through failing forward. What I mean by that is it's not a matter of if you fail, it's going to be when you fail and how do you pick yourself back up. One of my favorite quotes is from Dr. Danny Friedland. And to paraphrase, basically what he says is failure doesn't exist. Every time you fail, you learn. And if you continue to learn, you're never going to fail because all you're doing is taking another step along your personal pathway to being successful. I gave that speech to a mixed room in Toronto, and a 9-year-old kid actually got that. And he said to me afterwards, like, I'm never going to fail. As long as I'm learning, as long as I'm going forward, I'm never going to be a failure. And for me, that leaves an incredible legacy. He doesn't have to remember my name. He doesn't have to remember anything, but that's his takeaway. My gosh, you just never know what this young guy's going to do.
That's great. I love it. Awesome conversation, Todd. Before I let you go, where can my listeners go to connect with you online and learn more about your work?
Yeah, Nick, they can reach me at extraordinaryadvisors.com. And I guess, what I'd like to do, especially because you've been so generous to have me on your program today, is anybody who puts in the, contact questionnaire that they heard me on your program, I'm happy to give them a half hour of my time for free, just so that we can have a deep conversation about whatever's on their mind, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's fatherhood, whether it's, how do I build a business? I think we as a community need to remember that there's a large piece of abundance and not scarcity out there. And I want to be part of that abundance mindset.
Absolutely. Very generous and kind of you. Awesome stories based on a lot of experience, a lot of trial and error. and a ton of success. So thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share your story with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on your program.
And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Todd Palmer. Really great advice on focusing on margin over revenue. If you're early in your business or you're thinking about getting started, focusing on those details, like how you handle your receivables, when you need to be paid, whether you're going to focus on margin or price point or revenue, those are all decisions that are really, really important. They can set you up for success. Absolutely amazing advice about focusing on margin. If you enjoy that conversation with Todd, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review it right there on iTunes. In addition to reading each and every one of those reviews directly, it really helps iTunes understand that there are people that engage with this podcast, that want to hear more, that are actively engaged in helping me make it better and sharing their reviews. That's going to help them kind of understand through their algorithm what podcasts they should promote when people are out there searching for business, career, entrepreneurship type podcasts. And I would love it if you can do me that favor and help other people discover our content. All right, that's it for me this week. And I'd be remiss if I didn't remind you to get in the game. Trading time for money is no way to live. You deserve to live life on your terms, and building a lifestyle business is the fastest, safest, best way to do just that. I appreciate you being here, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Building a Lifestyle Business Podcast. To access the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.nickmurphy.io.